somewhere in an apartment in California, in a house in New Jersey, in a family group chat that exists in nearly every Filipino household across America, phones started buzzing on a quiet Sunday afternoon, not with sports scores, with something closer to a call to arms. A single name had just appeared next to another name on a draw sheet in Washington, D.C. And within hours, flights were being checked, flags were being pulled out of closets, and watch parties were being organized before anyone outside that community had even noticed what was happening. The reason was simple. Alex Eala, the 20-year-old from the Philippines, had drawn a two-time Olympic gold medalist in the very first round of her tournament. Her opponent needs little introduction to anyone who follows the sport closely. Zhang Qinwen of China once stood at world number 4, a ranking she reached in June 2024 on the strength of 5 Utah singles titles and a game built on raw, controlled power. She won gold at the 2023 Asian Games. She won gold again at the 2024 Paris Olympics on the sport's biggest stage. She reached the final of the 2024 Australian Open before falling to Aryna Sabalenka in straight sets 6-3, 6-2. For a stretch of her career, she was one of the most feared players on tour, the kind of opponent whose name alone changed how a match was previewed. Then, the injuries came. After Wimbledon 2025, Zheng underwent surgery on her right elbow, a setback that forced her out of competition for months and sent her ranking sliding all the way down to 123 in the world. That is not a small fall. That is a former top 4 player rebuilding her career almost from scratch, match by match, ranking point by ranking point. She returned to the tour in February, and the road back has not been easy. First-round exits followed at both the French Open and Wimbledon in 2026, results that would have felt unthinkable to her 2 years earlier. Her more recent form has been mixed at best: a quarter-final run at the Athens Open, a first-round exit at Wimbledon, a second-round finish at the Bad Homburg Open. By March, she said she was finally pain-free and beginning to find her rhythm again, winning 2 of her 3 matches in Doha. Still, the confidence hadn't fully returned. The reality is, after I came back from injury, I haven't won 3 straight matches in a row. That's the challenge I'm facing too, she admitted to reporters in Washington, a rare moment of honesty from a player who once operated at the very top of the sport and now has to speak in terms of small, hard-won steps. Eala and Zheng have crossed paths before, and the history is not in Eala's favor. Their only previous meeting came at the 2023 Asian Games, a 3-hour marathon that swung back and forth before Zheng closed it out 6-1, 6-7, 6-3. Buried inside that scoreline is a detail that makes the memory sting a little more. Eala had actually led 3-1 in the deciding set before Zheng found a way to claw it back. 3 years is a long time in this sport, and both players know it. Zheng herself acknowledged as much. The last time I played against her was 3 years ago. That's already a lot of years. Right now, it's going to be totally different. I'm just going to play my game, and we will see what happens, she said, grateful for the wildcard that got her into the draw in the first place. A wildcard is not a small courtesy. It means Zheng has nothing tied to protect this week, no ranking points on the line that she is defending. She is playing with house money, free to swing without fear, and that freedom is often what makes a wildcard entry so difficult to face. Eala, for her part, wasn't hiding from the challenge either. I'm excited. I think it's going to be a really tough match for me, she said, before adding, definitely I need to bring the intensity and level of competition fit for this level of tournament. So I'm really excited. It is the kind of statement that gives away nothing and everything at once, an acknowledgement of danger, paired with a refusal to be intimidated by it. But the draw itself was only the beginning of this story. What happened next had almost nothing to do with tennis and everything to do with what Eala has come to represent for an entire diaspora. Former world number 1, Andy Roddick, a man who has watched every kind of crowd this sport has ever produced, could not stay quiet about what was building around her arrival in Washington. He compared the growing frenzy to a 4th-round Wimbledon match, selling out so completely that fans could find no room anywhere in the stadium, no matter where they live. He gave the phenomenon its own name, and he said plainly that he was here for it, because it was good for the sport. That is not a small thing to say. That is one of the most respected voices in American tennis history, publicly naming a movement after a 20-year-old who had not yet played her first match of the tournament. What makes it more striking is where it happened. Melbourne makes sense as a hotbed of this kind of support. The Australian Open has drawn as many as 60,000 Filipino fans across a single tournament stretch, a reflection of one of the largest Filipino communities anywhere outside the Philippines itself. Dubai makes sense too, with its enormous population of overseas Filipino workers who treat these tournaments like family reunions. Even a smaller venue like Birmingham made a kind of sense, where a modest crowd could still feel enormous inside a compact stadium. Washington, D.C. does not fit that pattern. It sits roughly 4,000 miles from Manila, a city built around policy and government rather than tennis fandom, with no natural, long-standing Filipino tennis crowd for tournaments to plan around. And yet the chants started anyway, echoing through a venue that had genuinely never heard anything quite like it. Eala has spoken about why this connection runs as deep as it does, and what she said carries the weight of someone who has thought about it rather than reciting a line for the cameras. She has talked about pride, about where her people come from, about a community that does not simply celebrate success from a distance, but shares in it, as though the joy belongs to everyone the moment it happens to one person. That framing helps explain why families were rearranging entire sleep schedules just to watch a first-round match on a screen thousands of miles away, while the players prepared in private. That same energy was already visible on the ground. When Eala arrived for an early training session, Filipino fans from Washington, D.C., and the surrounding states were there waiting, following her every step from the players' lounge to the practice courts. She spent part of her Sunday hitting with fellow Rafa Nadal Academy player Abdullah Shelbey of Jordan, and later worked through an hour-long session with American Ashlyn Kruger, world number 66, under the watch of her coach, Joan Bosch. Forehands, backhands, volleys, returns, point construction. The ordinary mechanics of preparation, except almost nothing about the atmosphere around it, was ordinary. We are so proud of her. Keep going, Alex. One supporter shouted through the fence. Another, a young Filipino fan, put it simply, "She is such an inspiration. I don't even play tennis, but I love the way she fights on the court." Tournament security had to manage the swelling crowd as the session wrapped up, and even then, Eala stayed behind to sign as many autographs as she could before finally leaving the court. There is a number sitting quietly underneath all of this noise that deserves attention because it changes how the entire tournament should be read. Eala arrives in Washington ranked 29th in the world, one spot below the highest ranking of her career, a peak reached in the immediate aftermath of her run to the round of 16 at Wimbledon 2026. She is defending only 70 points from her results on hard courts last year, which means in the coldest, most mathematical sense, almost everything she earns this week is pure gain. There is very little to lose here and a great deal to win. That fact alone should feel like relief. It does not, because waiting in the very first match is a player who has already beaten her once before. There was also a piece of this trip that didn't survive the schedule. Weeks earlier, Arla and Venus Williams had teamed up at the Bad Homburg Open and reached the quarterfinals together, a pairing that felt like a genuine crossing of tennis generations, a 7-time Grand Slam champion sharing a side of the net with a 20-year-old still building her own legacy. Fans hoped to see it continue in Washington. Instead, Arla chose to withdraw from doubles entirely, and Venus went on to partner with Diana Schneider. Arla explained the decision in terms that said more about her mindset than any scoreline could. "Of course, I'm grateful for every opportunity I get to play with Venus and train with her and just learn from her," she said. "But I think she deserves someone who can give their all physically, mentally, in all aspects. Being it's my first week back, I won't be able to do that in both singles and doubles. I don't have the capacity yet to be able to give that in both." That decision means Washington is now a one-lane road for Eala, no doubles bracket to share her focus, no second draw to fall back on if singles goes wrong. The respect for what she's building has reached some of the biggest names the sport has ever produced. 4-time Grand Slam champion Naomi Osaka said, "I don't know much about Alex, but I think she's incredible. I think she's a star, And it's just really cool to have someone like her that people can look up to. Kei Nishikori, the highest-ranked Japanese player in the Open era and a former US Open finalist who famously upset then-world number 1 Novak Djokovic on his way to that final, added his own praise. She has a lot of weapons. She can be top 10 anytime if she can stay healthy, play good, and mentally stay tough. It is worth remembering where Eala is coming from as she steps onto these hard courts, because none of this attention arrived out of nowhere. Her most recent tournament appearance came in Berlin, where she reached the quarterfinals and defeated Elina Svitolina, a result that pushed her through to a semi-final meeting with Linda Noskova. Before that, her run at Wimbledon 2026 carried her all the way to the round of 16. A result that turned heads well beyond the Philippines and set the stage for the kind of reception she is now receiving thousands of miles from home. Osaka, who has lived at the very top of this sport across 4 Grand Slam titles, added one more line about that quality when she spoke about Eala ahead of the tournament. I really love hearing her talk, because it's really cool the things that she says. Coming from someone who understands better than almost anyone what it means to carry outsized attention at a young age. That is not a passing compliment. None of that will matter once the first ball is struck. The court does not know about a nickname coined by a former world number 1. It does not care about flags in the stands or chants echoing off unfamiliar walls. It asks one question over and over, point after point, and it does not accept excuses as an answer. Can she execute? That is the entire test, especially against a player who hits the ball as heavy and as fearlessly as Zhang Qinwen. Eala's last competitive appearance on a hard court came back in March in Miami before the clay season, and an unforgettable Wimbledon run reshaped the rest of her year. Everything about her has changed since then. Her ranking has climbed. Her name alone can shift the atmosphere inside a stadium before a single ball is struck. But grass is where her flat, aggressive game finds its rhythm most naturally. Hard court, under a Washington summer, against an opponent capable of forcing errors out of anyone who isn't fully locked in, is a different and much harder question whether what happened at Wimbledon was the start of something lasting, or a version of her game that only fully works on one surface. The William H.G. Fitzgerald Tennis Center holds 7,500 people, and by Tuesday it is expected to feel every bit of that capacity, and then some. Thousands of fans who crossed cities, states, and in some cases an entire ocean will be there to find out the answer in real time. Together, the chants will start before the first serve, the way they always do now. But chants do not win points, and crowds do not hit forehands. All of that noise, all of that pride, traveling across an entire diaspora, gets left outside the lines the moment the ball is in play. What happens next belongs entirely to her. The Mubadala DC Open runs from July 27 to August 2. And this first-round match against Zhang Qinwen is only the opening word of a much bigger answer that an entire community has been waiting weeks to hear. Whatever that word turns out to be, everything else that follows in Washington depends on it. Stay close, because this is exactly the kind of match worth watching from the very first point.